These are the laws you are to set before them. This sentence sounds as if it continues the previous portion, the giving of the Ten Commandments. However, we continue asking for centuries if Mishpatim portion preceded the giving of the Torah. In last week's reading, Yitro, who came to visit Moses, witnessed the leadership crisis. Moses acted as a solo representative of the government, and everything had to go through him. When Yitro saw it, he understood that this structure is doomed to collapse. Neither Moses nor the people would be able to continue in such a way. Moses' father-in-law replied, "What you are doing is not good. You and those people who come to you will only wear yourselves out. The work is too heavy for you. You cannot handle it alone." Even if Moses was the strongest human being ever, such a load would eventually break him and the people who stood before him from morning till evening. And soon they would get tired of it. People need and want justice. And if the judge, Moses in our case, is not available, or the waiting for the actual hearing date is too long, people will find different ways, find advisors or other judges. They will find an alternative that will eventually destroy the actual government. When Yitro saw it, he understood the consequences and advised Moses to put the leadership system in place. King David's lack of justice allowed Avshalom's rebellion to happen. We read that Avshalom stole the hearts of the people. How did he do it? We read in 2 Samuel that every morning Avshalom got up early and went down to the city gate, where he told the people who came to see the judge, "You know that our judicial system is slow and inefficient, and is looking for the compromise, for the plea bargain, and not for justice." Avshalom told the people, "If you are looking for a quick, efficient, available, and fair justice system, I, the king's son, will make sure you receive it." And what happened is that Avshalom behaved in this way towards all the Israelites who came to the king asking for justice. And so he stole the hearts of the people of Israel. The lack of justice, or the corrupt justice system, bothers us and makes us angry. It is hard for us to deal with a system that is unjust, overcomplicated, or inefficient. The next king after David was King Solomon, the wisest man that ever lived. We remember that when God offered to fulfill his one wish, any wish, in what looked like a very good decision, Solomon chose wisdom. And with it, he got both honor and wealth. But Solomon didn't ask for just any wisdom. He asked for a very special kind of wisdom to rule and judge righteously, to judge wisely. So give your servant a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong. For who is able to govern this great people of yours? In the previous Torah portion, Moses listened to Yitro. He chose men of valor and built a justice system. And then Moses took the elders of Israel and taught them the laws that are before us today. The difference between a thief caught in action and a thief caught a few days later. The difference between an ox that gored for the first time and the one that has attacked before. So after Moses taught Israel's elders these rules and statutes, at the end of our Torah portion, God's glory descended on Mount Sinai, and Moses went up to the mountain for 40 days. And it is written in a way that leaves the answer unclear if this Torah portion comes before or after the event of Mount Sinai and the giving of the stone tablets. Yeshua quotes from our Torah portion, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. This statement is meant to limit the degree of punishment and to restrain the degree of revenge. This commandment, an eye for an eye, puts boundaries on our vindictiveness. We are not allowed to hurt the offender unlimitedly, because then the other side will also respond with vengeance, aggravating the situation even more. And the cycle of violence would continue. This simple commandment of God limits the cycle of vengeance to a draw, and that's it. The New Testament reveals to us yet another possibility. Yeshua says that yes, you deserve justice, but you do not have to demand the maximum penalty. You can choose to forgive, choose to let go, or choose the merely symbolic punishment. Yeshua is not teaching us to refrain from protecting our family or our property. On the contrary, we have to do all we can to protect our families, our property, or our society. Yeshua does not ask us to forgive the thief or the rapist and to refuse pressing charges against him. Quite the opposite. Otherwise, the criminal would go free and will continue hurting others. Yeshua is talking about personal issues. Someone attacked you personally because of who you are, because of your faith, your identity, or your race. And on personal issues, we can decide to act graciously. Do not oppress a foreigner. You yourselves know how it feels to be foreigners, because you were foreigners in Egypt. This verse is well known and appears in different versions all through the scriptures. We are called to be compassionate to foreigners because we also were foreigners, and as such have suffered not only in Egypt, but all over the world. But what about the criminal who can hurt others as well? We are familiar with the saying in Judaism, he who has mercy on the cruel will end up being cruel to merciful. This saying appeared first in the context of King Saul, who showed mercy to the Amalekites and disobeyed the commandment to execute them. But later, he got mad at the inhabitants of Nov and killed them in the exact way that he was supposed to kill the Amalekites. That's where this expression came from. But it's a very deep concept, and it is important for our lives and the way we operate. It is relevant because being people of faith, we tend to hush problems and scandals of all sorts. Theft, abuse, sexual harassment. It's not only us, but large churches and many other organizations often silence up scandals. They keep such offenses quiet. Offenses against children, women, against innocent people. Partly, we hush scandals to keep the dirty laundry from being aired outside, especially in case it can stain the entire community, or the church, or the organization. Another reason is to minimize the degree of damage to others, especially if we are talking about the group leader, a famous pastor, or a rabbi. There is the fear that if such a story will be known outside, others will get hurt, and the credibility of the entire organization can be damaged. And sometimes people have the tendency to forgive, to give another chance, not to report to the police, not to embarrass publicly, understanding that we all sin and we all deserve a second chance, that we all tend to fall here and there. But this is exactly the phrase, he who has mercy on the cruel will end up being cruel to merciful. If we do not report a sexual assault, or if we allow a person who makes those of the opposite sex uncomfortable to stay in our community, in our congregation, then who are we helping and who are we hurting? If we know that a certain person is using others for financial or material gain, but we turn a blind eye to it, then who are we helping and who are we hurting? We have to do the utmost to protect the members of our community. Moving on. In this Torah portion, we find a demand for fair trial. Being sensitive is good and important. Being merciful is good and important. But the demand of our Torah portion, the demand of God, is to disregard the person's so-called misery, to examine the findings in a cold, objective way, and to deliver justice. We are not allowed to pity the perpetrator, even if he is poor and unfortunate. And it is natural to have pity on him, as it is written, do not show favoritism to the poor person in a lawsuit, and do not deny justice to your poor people in their lawsuits. These verses approach the issue from both directions, not to give preference to the rich and the powerful on the one hand, and not to pity the poor and unfortunate on the other, but to deliver true justice. Sometimes the rich and powerful are let off the crimes. They hire expensive lawyers who clear them from all guilt. They, the rich and powerful, receive unbelievable tax reductions, when we, the average folk, suffocate under taxes and tolls. The small businesses suffer when the large business will make profit on our behalf. But interestingly, when a wealthy and influential person will come to pray with us, we invite him to sit in the front, in the place of honor. We show him respect. James warns us of such behavior, saying, my brothers and sisters, believers in our glorious Lord Jesus Christ, must not show favoritism. The New Testament teaches that in the eyes of God, all people are equal. Men and women, Jews and non-Jews, all are equal in the eyes of God, and no man is worth more than the other. But the desire to have mercy is built into our character. We want to justify the poor. It is easy to side with the underdog. We often identify the unfortunate as the one who is right. It happens in civil and family courts. We see the poor and the weak as the ones who are right, regardless of the truth. As the world looks at Israel and the Palestinians, that we are strong. And that is why the world sees us as the aggressor. That is why the world supports them, the underdog, regardless of the truth. The law must be true and just, And yes, we are required to be compassionate, but at the same time to look at the cold facts objectively in order to come to the true and just decision without being blinded by the wealth, power, and influence of the strong, nor let pity justify the guilty. I would like to conclude with the idea of domestic peace, because in our congregations we are not, or even mainly dealing with sex offenders or thieves. Luckily, these cases are extremely rare. Most of our problems are limited to disagreement and family peacekeeping, problems with our neighbors, small problems that can't always be solved in court. In these situations, Yeshua asks from us, but I say to you, love your enemies, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you. In our Torah portion, we find the same idea. If you see the donkey of someone who hates you fallen down under its load, do not leave it there. Be sure you help them with it. Our rabbis tell us a story of two guys who hated each other, and the donkey of the one fell under its load. Now his rival saw the donkey of his enemy falling under his heavy load, but he chose to keep the commandment and to help his rival. The two enemies had to work together, had to help each other in getting the heavy load off the donkey and split the load, put half on the donkey of the first guy and another half on the second donkey. Now, working together made them into friends instead of enemies, caused them to like each other instead of hate. This is exactly what Yeshua is asking us to do, to see the troubles of or the hardships of others in our way, and to stretch out a helping hand. Shabbat Shalom.